So today's opener is February 6th. We're getting caught up from January 31st, so at the top it may say January 31st, but go ahead and scratch that and put February 6th as the date. So yesterday we started talking about determining the slope and the y-intercept from the slope-intercept equation, or slope-intercept form. So if you remember, slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. Now, slope is represented by the variable m, and slope is the number that's always multiplied or always right next to the x. Y-intercept is represented by the variable b. The y-intercept is the number that is always by itself. Okay? So we're going to look at this equation here, and we're going to first identify the slope, then we're going to identify the y-intercept. From there, we're going to graph it. So looking at this, what is going to be my slope? 2/3, because that's the number that's being multiplied by x. So the slope is 2/3. Then my y-intercept is -1, because that's the number that's by itself. Now, when we go to graph this, which am I going to graph first, my slope or my y-intercept? Yeah, you have to do your y-intercept first. So my y-intercept on my y-axis, my vertical line here, if it's a -1, am I going to go up 1 or down 1? So I'm going to go down 1. That's right. So from there, I graph the slope. Now, the slope of a line, the formula is rise over run. So my top number is my rise, which means I either go up or down, and my bottom number is my run, which means I either go right or left. Most of the time, I'm always going to go right because my run is going to be a positive, unless I have to manipulate that negative sign like what we had to in our notes yesterday. So if I'm going to do my rise over my run, if I start at my y-intercept, what do I do? Go up 2, and then I plot my next point. Now that I have 2 points, I can go ahead and graph my line. Draw my arrows on it. Make sure it extends through the end of each coordinate plane. What kind of slope does this line have? You should be able to tell me positive. You should be able to tell me one by just looking at the line or the slope itself, or you can just look over here. If it doesn't have a negative, then it's a positive slope. So that's it. That was the first part of our lesson. Now, if you flip your opener over, it has Wednesday's lesson on it. Walking around, a couple of you guys already understood it, which makes me happy. That means Wednesday is going to be icing for you. The icing on the cake. Easy. All right, so let's look at the back side here. So the first thing that you guys have got to remember is the slope-intercept formula, or the slope-intercept form, which means the equation for slope-intercept form is y equals what? That's the equation that I gave you guys yesterday in the upper right-hand corner of your note sheet. So now we're kind of doing it backwards. So now I gave you guys the line, but you don't know the slope-intercept formula or equation. You don't know what the slope is, and you don't know what the y-intercept is by using just the formula. You're going to have to use the line here to help you. So the first thing that you need to, well, actually, it doesn't have to be the first thing. You can solve this in various ways. The first thing you could do is find where the line crosses your y-axis. Or you could go through and find your lattice points and find the slope first. It does not matter. So let's just start by finding the y-intercept. So where does this line cross through the y-axis? So where does this line, so this red line here, where does this line cross the y-axis? Right here, right? It crosses the y-axis right there. That's going to be a positive 1. So where do I write the y-intercept next to? The b. Remember, b stands for y-intercept. So you guys told me the y-intercept was a positive 1. Now I can go ahead and find my slope. Now, remember, in order to find slope, I need 2 lattice points. Well, I got my first lattice point by finding my y-intercept. You can find lattice points starting anywhere So you can either start at the bottom of your line and find all your lattice points, or how I do it, I start at my y-intercept and I go to the right and I find the next lattice point from there, which would be right here. So if you remember, your lattice points go right in the corner where those grid lines intersect.
Wait, I thought you didn't go up to. You go up to, and then you go over one.
Oh, you could do that one too. Yeah, I totally missed that. Thanks, Isaiah. I put a +2. So, Isaiah found a lattice point closer. I got distracted, so I didn't. So Isaiah said, the next lattice point is going to be up 2 over 1. So he pretty much just told us what our slope was there. He said up 2 over 1. So what's the slope of this line going to be? 2 over 1. Now, the y equals is where we're going to write the equation for slope-intercept form. So, remember, y equals mx plus b. So y equals slope times x plus b. So how do I fill in this equation here? So 2x plus 1. Now, that's in simplest form. You could write it like this, or you could write it as a fraction. Either way would be an acceptable answer. And that's it. So that's what we're going to really get into on Monday or Wednesday.